business tips to successfully start and run your business so your business doesn't run you. And more importantly, we provide personal development tools to create a better version of yourself to provide the solid foundation for your life and business to stand upon. This is the Biz Reveal, and I'm your host, Craig Sawyer. This week's guest is author, speaker, and certified life coach with an emphasis on the law of attraction, Jason Goss. Jason tells his story, his journey from the dark hole of depression and anger, and his climb to happiness and success. His story brings awareness to the reality of depression and suicidal thoughts, and how to overcome those feelings and create your own happiness and spread happiness around you. After the show, learn more at www.jasongoss.life. or www.begreaterofficial.com. This is the Biz Reveal podcast with this week's guest, Jason Goss.
You know, who I am now, I never, ever in my life would have thought that I would be doing what I'm doing now. I'm a #1 international best-selling author. I'm a speaker, a transformational coach, a mentor, and a breakthrough specialist.
Wow.
You know, ever since I can remember, 4 or 5 years old, I've always had the memories and thoughts and emotions that came along with those memories of my childhood. And, during my childhood, I was surrounded with drugs and alcohol. I was surrounded with mental and physical abuse. I used to watch my dad, really, really lay it on my mom, on a daily basis. So these things were embedded into my mind, as a child. And, you never really know how they're going to affect you later on in life.
Yeah. And
I remember, when I was 15 years old, there was so many thoughts and feelings and emotions going on in my mind that, I decided that I needed to do something about it. And my answer to that was to end my struggle, to end my life. So I took it upon myself one day to go into the kitchen, grab a bottle of Tylenol, and I put 2 handfuls in my hands, 1 in each hand, and I downed each handful of pills, and I thought this is going to be it.
Yeah.
So luckily it wasn't. I took all of that pain and all of that struggle into my adult life and into my new marriage and into the life with my 2 children at the time. And when you suppress feelings and suppress emotions and suppress all of the things that happened to you in your past, it comes out into who you are later on in life. And that is something that I really had to learn from, really had to dig deep within myself in order to get myself out of that situation.
So where in that story, when things got at its worst, when you had the Tylenol in your hands and everything, I mean, that was the breaking point. What took you to that point? Why was that the low? So
when you get, to an age to when you start realizing what is going on in your life, for me, it was really looking at my friends. It was looking at their families and how their parents were with their children. I started to really compare. I started to really compare my life to theirs. And I started to realize that, this is not how it's supposed to be. So I remember one day I came home from school. My mother was both of my parents were addicted to methamphetamine, and they were taking things out of the house to pay for their drug habit when they couldn't pay for it. And then it turned to taking things out of my room when there was no longer things in the house to take. So they were taking my personal belongings out of my room. And I remember coming home from school one day, and the computer that was on my desk, which was a gift from somebody, it was an old computer, nothing special, but it was something that allowed me to quiet my mind. I would play games on the computer and sometimes even do homework on the computer. And I came home and I realized that it was gone. And they'd taken that computer to pay for their,
and that
their
was
drug
kind of your
habit.
Escape. That was your escape to get away from everything.
For me, that's what did it. For me, I was just so overwhelmed and the thoughts of hopelessness and abandonment really got to me. And that's what ultimately led me to make that decision.
And was it a light switch that came on when you said, this is not how it's supposed to be. I got to change. Was it a light switch, or was it something that happened gradually to you?
Honestly, after that happened, I did not tell anybody at school. I went to school just like I did every other day, suppressed feelings, never showed anybody what was going on,
Sure.
never told anybody what was going on. And that's something I think, that is so common with people that deal with a situation like this is we become a master of putting up a facade.
Right.
We really become a master of hiding everything that we're feeling, because it is very hard for people to open up and to be vulnerable and to share what we're feeling. And for me, that's what I did all the way up until I was about 32 years old.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. And in the days of, social media and Facebook and Instagram, and everybody's putting their best self out there. And sometimes it's not even their best self. Sometimes it's not even themselves, right? It's who they want to be or who they want everybody to think they are. And I can't imagine I have 3 kids, that luckily they're 23, and 20 now. But I can't imagine what it was like being for them in high school, because we didn't have to deal with the constant eyeballs when we were in school. We had enough peer pressure and bullying as it was, but to have everybody's lives, put on blast out there for everybody to see. And it's always your best life, right? It's always the nice things that you want everybody to see. And then when you go home and you try to compare it to your own life, and not knowing that their lives are probably the same exact life that you have. Obviously, your situation was definitely a little different. So when that was happening, and forgive me if I get too personal here, let me know.
No. By all means.
I'm just trying to get into the actual emotions of things. So when you were around your parents, when the drugs were in the house and you saw them under the influence, what was that like for you? How did that feel for you?
When I would see them in their state, I remember just feeling so much anger, feeling so much internal pain, and just constantly thinking, why does it have to be this way? Why do I have to see this? Why do my parents have to be this type of person? Because you hear about it all the time, but when it's actually happening to you, it's like, you have that why me, you end up with that victim mentality.
Right.
So, for me, that was the hardest thing was the why. And I took that why into my life, and for years and years and years, I had that why and that victim mentality. And it was really something that was so difficult to come to grips with.
Do you think it was?
And it wasn't until I...
Did you blame yourself? Did you think it was you?
You know what? Yes, I did. And the only reason why I believed it was me, it was my life, is because it was something that started when I was very young. So it just kind of, grew with who I was. Mm-hmm. It actually, it just conditioned me. It conditioned my mind to think the way that I thought. But when I became a little bit older, when I got into, my latter years of junior high school and high school, that's when I really started to think, okay, why is this happening? Why are my parents like this? Why do I have to hide how my childhood is around my friends, around their families? Because I felt like if I was to be open with them, open with my friends and open with their families, that they would not allow their kids to come and see me anymore. They wouldn't want them to hang out with me anymore. So it was just a really tough situation that I always attempted to hide from everybody.
Yeah. Yeah. And nobody wants, to feel that way, like where you have to hide who you really are. So
absolutely.
How many years was that like a conscious thing for you? Like from what ages were you?
Say that again. I'm sorry, Craig.
During what ages were you during that time when that was like a conscious thought process for you that you were going through, where you felt like you were angry and you're going through those why time periods? What age were you during that time?
Oh, geez. That started out from probably about 10 years old all the way up and through my adulthood. I didn't start my path of recovery until I was about 32 years old.
Okay.
So from 10 until 32.
And you had mentioned before that the anger, and I think that's an emotion that most of us go through, especially myself. If anything affects me that makes me sad or upset, I get angry. And I think I get angry because I allowed something to make me upset or sad. And so a lot of my emotion comes out as anger, not because I'm really mad. It's just I'm mad that I'm sad. I guess is the best way to put it. So I get the anger thing, and especially if you have to suppress it.
Yes.
That it's like a tea kettle. I mean, it's gonna pop eventually. So when you started, let's go back to the anger thing. You had an anger towards women specifically. What was that anger?
Yes.
Why was it towards women?
So for me, I really haven't pinpointed why I'm not as angry at my father as I was at my mother. Because maybe it's the bond that a mother has with her children. Maybe it's the feeling that as a child you want your mother to be nurturing, loving, give you all of those feelings and those emotions. So growing up, I felt all of those feelings and emotions. I felt the pain. I felt the abandonment. I felt the hopelessness. So I was conditioned not getting those. And when I went into my adult life and when I went into my marriage, I got married when I was 20 years old. I didn't know what I was doing.
Sure.
I didn't have the value of having a great relationship with a woman. I didn't know that value. I didn't know the value of being a good husband. I didn't know the value of being a great father. So I went into my adult life and into my marriage with an anger towards women because of what happened to me in my past. And when you go into a relationship like that and you have these suppressed feelings, I mean, my marriage was over before it even ended, before it even started. And I was married for 12 years. So for those 12 years, I had this anger towards women and I took it out on my wife at the time.
Sure.
It was such a dark time for me. I remember every time a scuffle happened, or an argument, not a physical scuffle, don't get me wrong, but an argument happened. I went back to being angry, just like you did. I didn't know how to open up and talk about my emotions. I didn't know how to open up and talk about what I was feeling. And that was because my mind had been conditioned from what I was seeing as a child.
Do you think that the relationship with your wife at the time was filling that void that you weren't getting from your mom? Like while you were growing up, did it fill that void, that unconditional love that everybody seeks and honestly that we need? Did it just fill the void and maybe that's why the marriage didn't work? Obviously you had the anger and things like that, but if it wasn't true.
That's a great question, Craig. And honestly, there was a void for so long and I was trying to fill that void with my wife at the time.
Yeah.
And also while I was married, I'm truly transparent. I share my truth and I did this in my book as well. During that time, my very dark time in my life, I tried to fill that void with an abundance of women. So when things happened within my marriage, I was out. I was gone. I'd walk out and I would go try and fill that void with this woman over here, with this woman over here. It was just a constant cycle that kept going over and over and over again, month after month after month, year after year after year, because I was trying to fill a void that I didn't have as a child.
Yeah. And I'm going to get personal here as well. I mean, that's kind of the whole point of this. I went through the exact same thing. My parents were wonderful. I mean, honestly, I couldn't have had a better childhood if I had dreamt it. I had a great childhood. My parents loved each other. They're still together, been married for, I think it'll be 49 years this June. So wow. It wasn't that. I really don't know where my need to be accepted came from. I'm a small guy. I'm 5'3". Got teased a lot in school. Maybe that's part of it. I don't know. But I did go through that myself. I was married to my son's mom. That lasted, I think, 15 months. She got pregnant when we were dating. We tried to make it work. It didn't. But, kudos for both of us for trying for a while. And then after that, I think it was just a series of dating that just didn't go right. And when you pour your heart into something and then it's not reciprocated, that hurts. And then I think to avoid getting hurt that way again, I put that wall up and I did the same thing. It was woman after woman after woman. And then I started realizing that when that woman would leave, I felt even emptier than I did before they arrived. And then that's when I awoke, and it took many years for me as well. I mean, probably 8 or 10 years of that lifestyle before I woke up and said, what the hell are you doing? And you do have to put yourself out there. So I can relate, man, and I know a lot of other people can too. Everybody has a story, and just not all people are willing to share it. So turning from that, so now that we know what you were, and obviously what you are now is, for lack of a better word, is a tremendous success. I mean, you're inspirational because you completely turned your life from what could have been the absence of life, right? You almost took your own life, which would have affected a lot of other people as well in a negative way. How did you start turning it around?
Okay, so I'm gonna go back into my story a little bit, kind of what led me to turning my story around. My mother, when I was 18 years old, she took it upon herself to check herself into the police station here, local police station, and she said, you know what, I need help. I need help. I'm hurting people around me. I'm hurting my family. I need help. So they relocated her about 80 miles away to a rehabilitation center. And for the next 8 years, she was sober. She started to live a clean life. She started to realize what she had done to everybody around her. Well, during those 8 years, I had so many painful memories in my life that I never let her in to mine. She would constantly reach out and try to mend and heal the relationship with her son. And I never let her in. I was married. I had 2 boys at the time. She didn't see them as much as she should have. And because of her lifestyle, because of the life that she was living, all of those years ago, she had contracted hepatitis C. So she had hepatitis C and she had cirrhosis of the liver. She went through 2 liver transplants. And then when I was 26 years old, she got put on the list for her 3rd liver transplant. So she was admitted to UCLA Medical Center. And I remember driving down there, 2-3 days out of the week just to see her, to see how she was doing. And I remember one day I drove down there and sat next to her in her room. She was on dialysis. She was full of tubes and couldn't really talk. And this time was a little bit different. I was sitting with her, and for the first time in my life, I started to feel a little bit of gratitude that she had cleaned herself up and that she was, on a different path. So the first time that I started to feel a little bit of gratitude, I sat there for hours, just kind of talked a little bit, told her how my kids were doing, her grandsons. And then I got up to walk out. And when I got up to walk out, I got to the door and she had tubes down her throat. And I heard this murmured sound and it caught my attention, and I turned around and we just locked eyes. We locked eyes for about 20 seconds. And I looked at her and I said, I know. Basically, she was telling me, I'm sorry for everything that I've ever done to you. I'm sorry for all the pain that I've caused you. So I went home. The next day I came back and she was on life support. Her body had given out. She didn't make it to for the 3rd transplant.
All right.
So we ultimately had to tell the doctors to take her off of life support, and we let her go. So this is when I really spiraled downhill. Now, not only was I living with the pain as a child and the things that I survived as a child, but now I was dealing with the guilt of not letting her into my life when she cleaned herself up. I was dealing with the guilt of not allowing my kids to be around her for all of those years that she was clean. So for the next 6 years, I was in a very, very, very dark place. Guilt, all of the pain as a child, just thinking, why didn't I let her in? Why didn't I allow her to heal this relationship with her son? Why didn't I allow my kids to come around her like they should have been? So that was a very hard time for me. And I remember during these times, my marriage had suffered. I ended up getting a divorce with my wife. I ended up destroying the relationship with my sons. So I was sitting at home one day, and when you're by yourself and there's no sound around you because you're alone, you really have time to reflect on the things that happened to you and reflect on the choices that you've made. And I told myself one day, you know what? I need to drive down to my mom's burial site. And I hadn't been there 6 years prior. I hadn't been there since the day that we buried her.
Oh, wow.
So I drove down to her burial site, and I remember walking up to her grave site. Just the tears were falling down, and, you know, the hairs on the back of my neck were standing up. And I got to her site, and right away I started screaming. I started yelling. I started telling her everything that I felt as a child, all of the feelings that I had buried deep inside of me. I told her everything that I needed to tell her, you know, to everything that I wanted to tell her, but I never reached deep inside of myself to do it. You know, I always thought, there's going to be more time. Oh, you know, we'll talk about it later. And that time never happened. So by doing this, I released so much weight off of my shoulders. I walked away from the cemetery that day with so much power. I've never felt that before in my life. And for me, that was my turning point of really looking at things in a different perspective. Really, you know, knowing that I need to talk about the things that I'm feeling. And for us men, that is very hard to do.
Very difficult.
That is very hard to do. For us men to feel vulnerable, to show any state of vulnerability is almost non-existent.
Yeah, so it's tough. And did that release the guilt for you, though? When being able to let all that out, did that also release that guilt about not telling her when she was there to hear you?
It did. It released the guilt. It released all of my anger towards her. And it allowed me to move on with my life. I still wasn't completely healed, you know, but it allowed me a lot more. What am I trying to say? It really let me move forward. You know, I still had some work to do, but it was such a weight off my shoulders and really allowed me to open up and to see a future. And, you know, honestly, it wasn't until I met a wonderful group of people did I really start to open up and really learn how to heal from the things in my past. So it was my turning point. It wasn't my time of healing, but it definitely was, you know,
it's not a switch.
I pivoted.
It's not a switch, right? Like, it does have to gradually happen, but at least you can pinpoint a circumstance or a period of time in your life anyway. And it was that day visiting your mom and letting all that out.
Copper Coast Gourmet Coffee. When fresh matters, we deliver it from the fields to the roasters and into your cup. CopperCoastGourmetCoffee.com.
Yeah, so the next step, and now you know you want to change. Now you know the type of life that you don't want. I'm not sure if you've realized yet what type of life you do want. Some of us don't. I mean, most of us don't know what we do want. We just know what we don't want, right? Because we've experienced what we don't want, and we just don't want to do that again. So what was the next step? You said you met a good group of people. Where'd that group come from?
So it's kind of amazing when I think about it. I don't know if you know who Lisa Nichols is.
I don't.
She is one of the teachers of The Secret, the book The Secret. She is one of the top speakers in the world, one of the top women speakers in the world. And I ended up in her living room through my fiance. My fiance is on the same path that I am, just speaks to a different group of people. And I ended up in Lisa Nichols' living room, and I shared a little bit of my story. So she invited me and my fiance to one of her events, and I went to her event, and she really put me through breakthrough after breakthrough after breakthrough. And since that day, I have been able to open up and share my story in its true transparency and share my authentic self, exactly who I am, exactly what I've gone through, and exactly what I've done to the people around me. And by doing that, and by giving myself the grace of being human and openly talking about my feelings and emotions with people, has really been, for me, the key to my healing.
Has that taken anything away from you? You know, because obviously helping people makes you feel better, and it does get it out, but does it take your experience away? What I mean by that is sometimes when you express an emotion, and again, I'm kind of generalizing us guys again, right? But when you express an emotion, I've had feelings where I just feel like it did you deserve that story? You have to earn my story. You know what I mean? And sometimes I feel like I'm giving things away that maybe the person I'm giving it to hasn't quite earned. And maybe that's just a way that I am guard myself too. Because as you said, it's hard for us guys to open up. So maybe that's my excuse, to have my guard. I don't know. But how did you feel? Did you feel that way at all? Or was it just a pure, just release, euphoric release for you?
It was actually a pure release for me. When I shared my story, this is funny how this happened because I've been coached, I've been coached several times by people within our tribe. And I remember one of my coaches saying, you know what, you need to get on a Facebook Live and you need to just share your story, share your truth. Just let it all out. And I said, nope, I'm not doing it. I can't do it. And that's what made me realize, I'm not truly healed from the things that happened to me in my past. So he talked me into doing it. And he says, okay, you're going to do it on Saturday. You're going to do it at 2 p.m. PST. And I said, cool. So I set everything up. I set up my phone, on the little tripod, and I get in there and I go to push play and I can't do it. 2:15 comes by, 2:30 comes by, 3:00. I sat there until 4:00, Craig.
Staring at that phone.
And he's texting my fiance, hey, what's going on? I'm waiting for his live. I want to watch what's going on. And she says, I don't think he can do it. And I'm sorry, Brisa's my fiance. She'd come in and she says, are you going to do it? And I said, get out of here. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. Get out of here. So finally they realize that I'm not going to do it. Mm-hmm. So he calls and he says, okay, let's just have a conversation on a Facebook Live. I'll extract it out of him. So I agreed to that. We did the Facebook Live. It came out great. All of the things that I was holding inside came out amazing. I'm sharing it with the world. And then the audio didn't come out. like you said, our conversation we had yesterday, it was choppy. You couldn't hear anything that I was saying. Yeah. And I got so upset. I says, you know what? I just sat in front of that camera for 2 hours. And then I realized that, I can get this out. So I walked back, I walked outside after that happened. I sat down, I set my phone up, and then I just let it all out. And by doing that, by letting everything out, it was such a release. And the feedback that I got from so many people, I was getting phone call after phone call after phone call from men, from my friends that have been suppressing things inside of them for so long. Now they felt okay to open up and share with me the things that happened to them in their life. So for me, no, absolutely not. Did I feel, like I felt like that this is what I'm supposed to be doing. I felt that I had to get my story out to the world in order to help people and men especially, because like we've been talking about, it is so hard for us to open up and talk about anything vulnerable in our lives. And we need to do it because we need, we're not alone.
Right.
We're not alone with the way that we're feeling.
Yeah. And I think it comes from, at least in my experience, if you're too emotional, it shows weakness, right? And you're supposed to be there to support your wife and you support the kids, and everybody depends on you to take care of them. But unfortunately, that leaves us in a place to, we need taken care of every once in a while.
Yes.
And I'm coming to that realization more and more now that my sons are out of the house. And then I think like most parents, you start thinking back on how you raised them. And, you start realizing some of the mistakes you made and you start feeling guilty about it, which is why I think grandparents, honestly, I think that's why they spoil their grandkids, right? Because they're making up for all the stuff that they feel guilty for when they're raising their own kids. I kind of get it now. But I wonder how much of my mess, my mental mess, my emotional mess, I gave to my son. I was a single dad for 12 years, so it was just him and I. So I do relate to, when, like you said, with your mom and then maybe getting married young and just needing to fill that void. Yes. I'm concerned for him, because he's been nothing but angry with his mom. He went through his entire childhood. In fact, he's 23 now and still going through it where, she's never been a mom. And so he feels like he was discarded by his own mom. And that's tough. That's
Yes.
tough to live with. And I don't think that story's over. I don't think it's ever going to be over. I think he's going to carry that on to, relationship after relationship, and hopefully, at some point it gets resolved. But we do have to talk about it, because if we don't talk about it, nothing's going to get helped. And there's no shame in talking about it at all. And I think a lot of us guys, even though we don't like to openly admit it, we don't mind talking to one of our guy friends about that kind of thing. Say, man, have you ever felt this way? Have you ever gone through this? Have you and your wife ever experienced this problem? We need somebody to lean on, and it's okay to do that with the guy, right? But sometimes it's harder to do with your own wife, because you don't want her to look at you differently,
Yeah.
And at least in my experience, I don't want her to think, yeah, but man, he's a baby when it comes to this. You know what I mean? But I think we're just human. So when you said it was Lisa, right?
Yes.
Okay. When you met with Lisa, tell me about that day. Tell me about that visit in the living room there.
Oh, so my fiance has been training with Lisa ever since she shared her story. My Brisa has an amazing story. And she met Lisa several years ago, shared her story, and she's been pretty much under Lisa's wing for the past 4 or 5 years. And we were down there. Brisa offered to do Lisa's nails before an event because she used to be in the beauty industry. So she went down there to do her nails. And I'm just sitting in the living room. At this time, I had no idea who she was. I just thought she was, she is famous. I thought, okay, she's famous. But I didn't know what she did in the world. I didn't know who she was. And I remember talking to her, and the passion that this woman has in her words, in the way that she looks at you, in everything, she just blew me away. Like, I felt this amazing feeling of love, of compassion. And I was just drawn into it. I was like, wow, this really exists in the world.
Yeah.
It's funny, the doors that you see once you start seeing things differently and changing your perspective, the doors that you see that you normally wouldn't see before, how many are there and how many doors that you can walk through. And this was absolutely one of those doors. She was just so true. So just such a wonderful, wonderful person. And then, moving forward with her and going to her events and learning the things that she's teaching people, for me, that was a door that I had to walk through within my journey in life. And, if I could, I wouldn't go back and do anything differently. This is exactly what I'm supposed to be doing. And, such an amazing experience, just the meeting and everything else that has come after. It's just, I don't even know how to explain it, Craig. It was just such an amazing feeling.
Just blessed that cross path, or the path.
Oh, yes.
That the paths crossed that way. So, and what she talks about, it's the law of attraction, right?
Yes.
What is the law of attraction?
So the law of attraction is based around what you focus on grows. Everything that you think about, all of your thoughts, all of your feelings, all of your emotions create energy. And that energy is what you expel out into the universe. And that energy that you expel into the universe is what is ultimately going to come back to you. And that's what I was doing for 30 years of my life, is I was expelling nothing but negative energy out into the universe. And that's all that I was seeing. That's all that I was attracting into the universe. So it wasn't until I was able to flip my perspective, to rewrite my script, so to speak, in this movie called Life that I was playing within my mind,
right,
did I realize that, I can change that energy into positive. That way I can attract the positive energy back into my life.
So it's kind of like if you're looking at a person and then you catch eye contact, you smile, they smile back. So
absolutely.
I mean, it's simple as that, because I know sometimes if somebody hears about energy and putting out good energy and things like that, sometimes people roll their eyes, are like, oh God, it's one of those, right? But it's really that simple. It's just about, if you walk by somebody on the street that you would normally just walk by and keep going about your day, if you say hi, usually they say hi back. You smile, they smile back. So what you do comes back to you. So if you can create something positive, hopefully that something positive will come back to you, and it kind of just regenerates over and over.
Absolutely. How many times have we woken up in the morning on the wrong side of the bed?
Yeah.
And then you start to realize things happen over and over and over throughout the day that are just pissing you off.
Yeah.
You wake up on the wrong side of the bed. You get up and you have breakfast. You spill your coffee all over the table. It gets on your lap. Then you're late for work. Okay. So then now you're speeding down the highway because you're late for work, and you get pulled over and you get a speeding ticket. All day, these things are just compounding and compounding and compounding because of the negative energy that you're putting out into the universe. Everything that happens in life, every situation that happens in life, I like to say it like this. Those things are just is. There is. But until you choose which perspective that you're going to look at it, does it create either a negative energy or a positive energy? If that makes sense.
But you have to really train yourself to do that, right? Because I'm the same way. I tend to be a little pessimistic.
Absolutely.
I think those of us who call ourselves realists, I'm like, I'm a realist. I'm just going to tell you how it is. Life is this way, whether it's good or bad. I'm going to say how it is. But sometimes that can come off as pessimism, even to myself. So it does have to be a very conscious effort at first, right? You kind of have to make it a habit, just like anything else. If you want to learn how to play guitar, you have to consciously learn how to play guitar. And then after a couple of years, you're just doing it like it's nothing. Is it the same way? Like, you really have to think about doing those things?
You absolutely have to be conscious with what you're doing, because, when you're, let me see how I'm going to go back here. For me, for so long, I was conditioned. My subconscious mind was conditioned to think a certain way. It was conditioned to putting out negative energy and receiving that negative energy. So I went through day after day after day, expecting negative things to happen to me, expecting negative energy to come back to me. So when your mind is conditioned, you have to really look into the things. You have to really dig deep inside of yourself, and you have to retrain your mind, because by the time we're 35 years old, we're operating on 95% from our subconscious mind. And if you've conditioned yourself to think a certain way for so long, you do have to create new habits. And you really have to take everything that happens to you one by one and kind of flip the script. Like, you know what? This happened to me for a greater purpose. This happened to me for a greater good, and see the gratitude in each situation. And by doing that, by flipping it around and seeing the gratitude in the situation, you create a new emotion. And when you create the new emotion, that's when you can start to get the energy to shift. And it's a constant practice that you have to do on a daily basis in order to change the script that your subconscious mind is telling you.
Yeah. And like you said, you start expecting bad things to happen to you, and not necessarily bad things, but, maybe not good things, right? I know when I'm going to pick up this phone call, the person's going to say this. And not only are you expecting it, but you're also creating your response to it, because now you're planning, okay,
Absolutely.
If they're going to say this, here's what I'm going to say, and I'm not going to be nice to them, right? So it snowballs, and it's very easy to fall down that pit. And even though I'm a very happy person, I'm happy with my life, I'm madly in love with my wife, I love my kids, but it's so easy. It's so much easier to be negative than it is positive. And I don't know why that is, but we tend to really analyze the bad parts of our lives, and not the good parts. Like when we keep journals, and I think keeping journals is a really great way to help ourselves, sort through our own thoughts. So if you keep a journal and you're journalizing the negative part of your life, and then things start turning around, and got a good job and things are going good there. I'm in a good relationship now. Financially, I'm doing okay. All of a sudden, the writing in the journal kind of stops, and we stop writing in the journal. And then you got to wonder, why did I stop writing? Because I want to know what I was doing when things were going good, because I want to keep repeating that. So I think it's even more important, or at least as important, to analyze the good aspects of your life, to find out who were you around during those times when you were at your best. What were you doing? What was your schedule like? How much sleep were you getting? What were you eating? Find out what was working for you when the good things were happening, not just when the bad things were happening. So as that process for you, where you have to train yourself to start creating good energy, start being more positive. Did you feel fake when you're going through that? Like you're creating an attitude or creating emotions that you weren't really feeling, but you had to do it intentionally to try to push yourself to feel a certain way?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you have to fake it until you make it, so to speak. You really do. You have to train yourself. And I love the fact that you said you like journaling, because that is part of, I'm writing an online course right now, and that is part of the online course, because unless you're able to openly speak about what you're feeling and openly speak about your thoughts and emotions, journaling is an amazing tool, because not everybody is ready to talk about the things that they're feeling. So journaling, I have my clients journal everything that they're feeling throughout the day. And like you said, I tend to journal things that I don't want. Mm-hmm. I tend to journal the lack, the negative things, but then I stop when I start to get into the positive aspect. For me, I flip it. If they have something that's negative, I tell them to flip it right away and journal the positive, journal the abundance that you have in your life, because you do need to train yourself. As humans, our brains are wired to focus on everything negative. We tend to focus, we're wired to focus on the lack because we want to protect ourselves. Our brain wants to protect our thoughts and feelings. So that's why we focus on all of the negative. That's why we focus on all of the hurt. That's why we focus on all of the things that want to do us harm. So we have to overcome that, and by overcoming that, it is a constant battle. We're not only fighting the way that our minds have been conditioned, but we're also battling a part of our brain called the amygdala, which is our internal protection system. So every time that we sense fear or anxiety or grief or, something of that aspect, our brain is telling us, oh, no, we can't go there, because that's vulnerability. So that's why people have trouble, sticking to diet, sticking to lifestyle changes, because it's pulling them outside of their comfort zone.
Is that the fight or flight area?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. So you just have to train yourself. And the way that I teach people to train themselves is by journaling and speaking, even faking it until you make it when you have to.
And journaling, the hardest part of that, and I'm not consistent with it. I've done it, periodically here and there. I've never been really good at it. And because I've never really been able to figure out what to write. And I think that's part of the process, is that you start thinking about those good things that you should write about. And then you start realizing, man, my life is pretty darn good. I've got a lot of stuff I could write down, but it's just hard to acknowledge those things because, what stands out in your day? When your wife comes home from work and you say, how was your day? My wife's a teacher, right? So she's like, this kid pissed me off today because he wasn't paying attention. And, then we had a meeting that went way, way too long or whatever. And again, those are the big events of their day, but what are they? They were negative things. Well, what good things happened? So, and even that's a way that maybe your spouse could help you, right? Say, okay, that sucks, but what happened that was good? Anything good happened today? And then force her or force yourself to acknowledge, well, I guess there were a couple cool parts about my day, but that's the hardest part I think about journaling, is just realizing that there are some good things that you can write down, but that's part of the process, right? Forcing yourself to realize, hey, life isn't so bad.
Absolutely. Even the negative things, like here's an example. You're driving on the freeway. Somebody cuts you off and almost, hits the front of your vehicle, and right away you get pissed off. You start cussing, you're cussing them out, and, you can journal that. You can journal that negative experience, mm-hmm. but look at it from a different perspective. Wow, I'm glad that person didn't hit me, because we could have rolled off the side of the freeway. We could have rolled the car 5 or 6 times. We may not be here tomorrow. That person is probably somebody's father. Is probably somebody's husband. It's probably, whatever. He could have crashed. He could have rolled off of the freeway and he could have been on, Channel 5 News, a fatality on the freeway, but that didn't happen. So there's the gratitude in that situation. Journal that.
Right.
Journal what happened, and then journal how you flip the script and how you change your perspective.
How often should you go back and read your journal? No, I mean, because we're talking about writing things in there. Are we writing things in there just to get them out and on paper, or is that something that we should be going back and reading through? And if so, when do you go back and read through it?
I would read through. I usually tell my clients to go a week with the things that happen to them, whether it be positive or negative. If it's negative, flip the script, look at it from that different perspective and find the gratuity in it, or the gratitude, and go back and read it each week, because you want to embed your system. You want to, embed this into your system. You want to bombard your system with these new thoughts and new emotions in order to get over that conditioning that we've been used to for so long.
Of all the ways that we take care of those that we love, the most important is providing the care they need when they need it most.
Sawyer Health Solutions. Go to SawyerHealthSolutions.com for a free health insurance quote. What else can we do? For somebody like me who, and again, I always consider myself Joe Schmo. I always say that. I think I'm an average guy in an average world. So now, I want to start fixing myself. So that's step number one, right? Realizing that I need to start fixing myself. Step two, I need to start creating some good energy, start having a more positive outlook, and try to, project that out onto the people that are around me as well. Step three, maybe keeping a journal. What else can I do? How do I create that environment for myself?
Positive affirmations. Every day, tell yourself what you are going to do, who you are. I am an amazing person. I am a great father. I am somebody that is going to make a difference in this world. I am going to impact so many lives. You keep telling yourself that thing over and over and over again, and it's going to happen. So affirmation after affirmation after affirmation. For me, I am going to be the best father that I can be. I am going to repair the relationship with my kids. I am going to change people's lives. I am going to help people all over the world with the things that I've learned throughout my journey.
Do you set goals for yourself?
I set goals for myself every day.
Yeah.
Every day. And the goals are always around these affirmations. You have to train your mind to get out of the negative state. You have to train your mind to get out of the, am I good enough? Am I going to be able to do this? Am I going to be able to, accomplish this goal? No, you have to affirm it. You have to, like when I wrote my book, who am I? I don't know if I could write a book. I never thought that I could write a book. And then I sat down one day, I said, you know what? I'm going to write a book. And for the next 3 days, I told myself, I'm going to write a book and I'm going to change lives and I'm going to be vulnerable. I'm going to be transparent. I'm going to do everything that everybody around me is telling me you have such a story that you can help so many people. So I took that and I just affirmed it and affirmed it and affirmed it. And before I knew it, in 3 months, my book was out. And when it was coming out, I said, I am going to get bestseller. I am going to get #1 bestseller and #1 international bestseller. You just affirm it and put that energy out there and it will come back to you. I know it sounds rah, but it is absolutely fact.
But you do have to back it up. I mean, you can't just say those things, right? I mean, and not take any action. I mean, you got to follow up and actually do something as well.
That's absolutely right.
Yeah.
You do have to put relentless action behind what you're speaking into the world. But by speaking it and by telling yourself those things, you have the ability to do them. You no longer have the limiting beliefs that you would have if you're not telling yourself those affirmations.
Right. Now, if you are somebody who's a professional, maybe management, owner of a business, you've got employees. I'm not even going to say how many because I don't really think it matters whether it's 5 or 500. How can you relate this in a personal way to create an environment in the workplace as well in the same way? Is there a way to get that to translate? When you're speaking with the masses, it's a little more, because you have to stay so general because everybody's so different. And so it is a little bit harder. Just like, right now we're talking to a broad audience. We don't know, who specifically we're talking to, what kind of lives they have, man, woman, tall, short, nationality. We don't know any of those things. So we have to stay general. And these are all pretty good things for our personal lives. but our personal lives do affect our professional lives, which is why I have you on, the Biz Reveal here, right? Because we, ultimately this is for businesses and things like that. But if we're not good people on our own, we can't project that goodness, and we can't, we have to build a foundation for that. But is there a way that this can be presented, to create the type of culture that you want to create within your business, to be able to have happy employees and project their own positive energies? Because those of us who have been in the retail environment or sales environment, we know, or, waiters and waitresses in the service environment, life can be hell. And it's very, very easy to be negative and say all the negative things about the people who come to visit you, How can we use this for the masses within our workplace to try to create a culture of this?
For me, I know that everybody is not open to receiving this message. And I approach my coaching the same way. I realize that not everybody is going to really let in some of the things that I'm saying. And that's okay.
Sure.
I have to remember that I can't change everybody. I can't change everybody's perception and perspective on the way that they see things. But I do know that there are a lot of people that are openly looking for change. And I think that in a business, environment, I think that that's probably the same approach that would have to be taken, that not everybody is going to receive that type of message. But the ones that do, and the ones that do want to, is better than none at all.
And I think that,
so maybe,
yeah, for sure. And I think that also just by even presenting it will show those employees what type of culture you're trying to build and what type of person you are, what type of owner you are, that you care about their well-being as a person. They're not just employees. And if anybody's listening to this today and they have their own business, they have employees, or they have people that they lead every day, if they can take away anything, is to make sure that each one of those people feels like a person first, because they are.
Yes.
They have lives, they have their own problems, they got their own families and their own situations, their own stories. And we need to make sure that we acknowledge that. We don't need to know about all of them, but we need to make sure that we acknowledge that they do have their story. You could be one of my employees working for me, and I would not know anything about your story. But if we can create that feeling of positivity and everything, maybe you are still going through that story. Maybe you hadn't had that conversation yet. And maybe I could be the person to help you realize that there is some positive things out there that we can get you to switch your way of thinking. And you could be that person to change, and help that person along without even knowing it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I worked in the water industry before I began this path. I was actually a water treatment operator for the Army out at NTC Fort Irwin. And I was there for 13 years. After I released, I left that job about a year and a half ago. And after I released my book, I sent it to all of my coworkers at that job. And they thought, or what they told me, the feedback that I got was, you know what? You were here for 13 years and I learned more about you in that hour and a half that I read your book than I ever did when you worked out here for these 13 years.
Yeah, what a shame, right?
And absolutely. And it's because, like you said, it's because that we can be on the job and we don't really know the people because we don't open up. We don't know how to open up and talk about our feelings and emotions. So I think you're right. I think that having that kind of environment, with the people that you're around is just going to create the connection and make that business so much stronger.
Yeah. And I'm afraid that we're kind of taking a couple steps backward because of, COVID and, the separation that we have to have and the social distancing and, which I think, that those two words should be a 4-letter word, because it is creating more separation. Now, hopefully, we're going to get out of this eventually. I mean, it's going to happen. And only time will tell, how history will, present itself here. But, I hope that it doesn't create space between people, because what we need more than anything right now is to be closer. Right. The last 10 or 12 years of the social media years, although we're connected so easily now, we're more disconnected now than we ever have been. And I think that we need to spend a little bit more time getting to know each other as human beings first, and not be so,
Yes.
I guess judgmental, because we always put our best selves out there on social media, right? The pretty pictures of the beach, and we don't put the nasty stuff out there that we're going through, and nor necessarily should we. But then we start comparing lives, and that person's life's so much better than mine when it's not. They're just only putting out that positive stuff. So I hope that we can all can we all just get along? You know what I mean? But start getting to know each other as people, and not just as a coworker or as a boss or whatever the case is, and really get to know people. And I think we could start caring a little bit more.
Absolutely. That's one of the things that from my past and from the things that happened to me, that's one of the things this when we're talking about social media, I really, really love to come onto social media and to share my transparency, because now is the time, like you were talking about your son earlier about, not wanting to come out and talk about the things that are bothering him. And with social media, everybody, like you said, is sharing the best version of themselves. That's
right.
all that they want to share on social media. So that comparison, especially more so now than 10, 20 years ago,
right.
The comparison is there. It's going to really start to affect people more than it did 20 years ago. So for me, when I get on social media, I really get raw and transparent and share my truth every time that I come on and do like a Facebook Live or something. I like to share things that happen to me throughout the day so people can relate to it, so they can resonate. You know what? That happened to me too. Instead of just showing that I'm like this perfect person
right.
standing on this pedestal. No, I want to show people that, it happens to everybody. I'm going to share my transparency. I'm going to share my truth. And I think that we all need to really think about that and do that more.
Yeah, being genuine needs to make a comeback, doesn't it? Just being real.
Oh, absolutely.
Faults and all.
Absolutely.
Faults and all. Just be real and be honest with people. And I think it does go a long way, not only just personally, but, business wise. And anytime you're out and about, and I am the kind of guy that I'm a sales guy. Although I don't like to admit that because I hate salespeople, but I'm in sales, so I talk to people all day long, and I'm the kind of person that if I'm standing behind you at the grocery store and we're waiting in line to check out, man, you're there, I'm here, let's have a conversation. So it could be small talk. It doesn't have to be super in depth, because a lot of times we don't have time for that. But if you got 2 minutes, and that this is just going back to creating that positive energy with people. Yeah, if you got 2
Absolutely.
minutes, say hi, and, they got a child or a dog with them or something like that. You can, oh, that's a cute dog. And it just makes them feel good. And, then write that thing down. Write down what you did to make somebody else feel good. Because the one thing that makes me feel best is when I'm making somebody else feel good. Because making somebody else feel good makes me feel good. So it's serving both purposes. And I think that sometimes it lasts longer. If you're just doing something because it makes you feel good, we need to do that every once in a while, right? You have to be selfish every once in a while, make sure you're taking care of you. But when you are helping somebody else and you make them feel good, oh man, that feels 10 times better.
Yes.
So, yeah.
I love that. I love how you stand in the grocery store and spark a conversation with somebody, or smile at somebody and they smile back. Yeah. That is, like you said, that is creating that positive energy that is coming back to you. And if we can do that over and over and over and over again throughout our day, we realize that, we had a good day.
Yeah. Yeah.
If we can learn how to master today and do that every day, imagine what kind of life that we can lead. Yeah. Imagine what kind of life that we could live.
Yeah. And then everybody's going to do the same thing.
It's just those small things that you do, compounded small movements. It's something that we call pinky moves. I'm going to kind of jump out of my story a little bit and talk to you a little bit about what pinky moves is.
Okay.
My fiance 6 years ago suffered a rare pawn stroke and developed locked-in syndrome. She was given a less than 1% chance to live by the doctors at New York Presbyterian Hospital. So while she was locked in her body, she was completely aware of everything that was going on around her. But she had no way to transmit those signals from her brain into her body. It was a pawn stroke is in the brainstem. So she was, the only thing she had was eye movement. So everybody's standing around in the hospital room, and she wants to be part of this conversation so bad because she wants people to know that she's still in there. The doctors are saying she's not going to survive. So she's reaching deep inside of herself, and she realizes that all she has is her thoughts. This is where Lisa Nichols comes in, because she was listening to The Secret on audio over and over and over again. And in The Secret, it says, thoughts, make a command to the universe will respond to your thoughts. Thoughts were all that she had. So she was thinking in her mind and affirming in her mind, I am going to move. I am going to show people that I'm still in my body. You watch. I'm not listening to what you doctors are saying. So she gathered up all of this energy and got that energy through her brainstem and down into her pinky. And she flickered her pinky. So by her flickering that pinky, it accelerated her recovery. One day she moved her hand. The next day she moved her arm. The next day she sat up. The next day she started to try and talk. It's these pinky moves, these small movements.
I love that.
That we can compound every day. And before we know it, we've moved mountains. The same thing throughout your life. You make these small adjustments to create this positive energy over and over and over and over again. We're going to live a great life.
She ran a marathon.
So she ran a 10K, and she ran a half marathon, I think, after the doctors told her. Every time she'd go back to the doctor, she'd go back in a wheelchair. Brisa, this is an amazing recovery, but this is probably as good as it's going to get.
Yeah.
And then the next time she would go back in a walker. Brisa, this is amazing, but this is probably as good as it's going to get. And then she'd go back in a cane, and then she'd go back and be walking. And then she went back and told them, I ran a marathon. And how did it start? By one of those pinky moves.
I love that. I love that you have that name for it. And for anybody out there that's listening, it says that, that's just luck. You can't will yourself into healing. That was a medical. Actually, if you think about it, your thoughts can heal you because they can certainly hurt you. So why couldn't they, because if you're super stressed, where do you think ulcers come from? Where do you think depression comes from? So that's where your physical life affects your emotional life, right? Or vice versa. Your emotional life is affecting your physical life. So you can will yourself into positive situations. And I did watch that story on her because she's been on multiple talk shows and things like that as well. And that is an amazing story. And I can't imagine that feeling. You know what it reminds me of? I hate to say this, but Metallica's song One. And right, you've seen the video, and it's off a movie where this guy's fighting the war. He loses his eyesight. He loses his hearing. His both legs are gone. So he's basically just a stump, but he can think, and he's not dead. And he wants to be able to express himself, but he can't. Because there's no means to. And so for her to be locked in her own head that way and not be able to tell people anything or to show them even, I can't imagine what that felt like for her. So her recovery, just any recovery is amazing. I mean, that enough is a success story, but for her to do it the way she did it, and basically, to hell with you doctors, right? I don't care what you tell me. I don't care what history has proven. This is me. I'm going to do it my way. I'm going to do my thing here. So I like that you've named it the pinky thing. That's cool. I like that a lot.
Yes. The things that we're capable of when we truly put our minds to it and we truly change our mindset,
it's powerful.
We can overcome anything in our lives. We can move mountains. I like to use the example of a rock climber. You look at these huge rocks, these faces of these rocks that they're climbing. They're not just starting down at the bottom and boom, they're at the top. They make one small move at a time, one 6-inch move at a time, strategic move, and over time they have just climbed that mountain.
Yeah. Small achievements make one big one.
Mindset.
Yeah.
It's all mindset.
And I always tell people, celebrate every one of those little things, man. Because
eventually you're going to have that big goal that you want to achieve. But before you can have any big goal, and this goes with anything in life, anything at all, personal, financial, business, professional, whatever you're doing, any goal that you have, they're goals for a reason, right? They seem unattainable, but if I do enough, but if you just write down the goal, it seems unattainable, right? Because I'm like, I'm dreaming. But if you write down the goal and then start working yourself backwards and putting those little bitty tiny steps in there, it makes that goal seem like, I can do that. I mean, all I got to do is this. And then when I do that, all I got to do is this. And when I do that, all I got to do is this. And it's a natural progression. But each one of those little progressions that you make, man, celebrate every single one of them. I don't care what you do. Take yourself out for dinner, an ice cream. It doesn't have anything big, but celebrate each one of those things because, again, that creates that positivity and get you where you want to go. I was just
going to say that. Celebrate, celebrate, celebrate. Yeah. Not only does it create the positivity, but it creates the emotion that comes along with the positivity. And that's what we want to do, is focus on the emotion.
And you want to get addicted to those feelings.
Yeah. Celebrate everything. And that's part of what Pinky Moves is celebrating all of those small micro wins, all of those small micro victories. Celebrating is such a powerful tool to use because awesome. It makes you want more.
Right.
It makes you get up the next day and say, you know what, I'm going to do something so I can celebrate again.
I want that ice cream cone today, man.
Yeah. Yes.
Right. I got to earn that thing. Jason, thank you so much, man. It's the end of my time today, but thank you so much for chatting with me and especially digging deep and telling us about your personal story. Because I know that's, even though you've told it multiple times by now, I know it's never easy to dig in there sometimes and express how you feel. So I appreciate that. If you wouldn't mind, tell us all about the book, where we can go to get it.
Okay, so you can get my book at jasongoss.life, jasongoss.life. And then also I have a free gift for your listeners at pinkymoves.com. And you're going to get your free manifestation guide to living your limitless life there.
Awesome. We always like free stuff.
Yes. Yes.
Jason, thanks so much, man. I appreciate your time that you spent with us today, and I look forward to future conversations as well, man.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, Craig.
Oh, you bet. Thank you.
Thank you, buddy.
Thank you for joining us this week. Go to our website at thebizreveal.com to catch all of our past episodes. We're available on all podcast apps, or you can watch any of our episodes on the Biz Reveal YouTube channel. This is the Biz Reveal. Till next time.